Derby Market Hall this morning, a gathering of people here to talk about whether locals think politicians can deliver the Brexit they asked for.
And the continued uncertainty caused the value of the pound to fall against the dollar and the euro. I'll be looking at the reaction from businesses.
Also for you this morning, the father of murdered backpacker Grace Millane has visited the place where her body was found on the outskirts of Auckland.
It is make or break for Liverpool and Tottenham in the Champions League. Napoli travel to Anfield while Mauricio Pochettino sharpens his spurs in Barcelona.
Good morning. It's a frosty start for some of us with some patchy fog. There will be some sunshine today in the forecast, but there's also a lot of cloud and some spots of drizzle. I'll have more details in 15 minutes. It's Tuesday, the 11th of December. Our top story, of course, is that Theresa May has begun a whistle-stop tour of the EU. It's all in a bid to rescue her Brexit deal. It follows another dramatic day in Westminster as the Prime Minister announced that she was delaying the vote on the plan. There was silence from her own side and laughter from the opposition. The deal she had insisted could not be changed or replaced would now be modified and delayed. Our political correspondent Jonathan Blake takes a look back at the event. I should warn you that this report does contain some flashing images.
Can you really improve your deal, Prime Minister?
Theresa May arrived back at Downing Street last night after a day of drama in the House of Commons. She confirmed the vote on her Brexit deal would be delayed and that she'd go back to Brussels to ask the EU for changes. The Prime Minister told MPs she had no doubt her agreement was the right one, but acknowledged widespread concerns about a plan to avoid physical checks at the Northern Ireland border if a trade deal can't be done.
It is clear that while there is broad support for many of the key aspects of the deal, on one issue, the Northern Ireland backstop, there remains widespread and deep concern.
The Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn accused the government of being in disarray and later in the evening called for an emergency debate.
It cannot be right that the government can unilaterally alter the arrangements once this House has agreed on a timetable without the House being given the opportunity to express its will. The public, Mr. Speaker, will look at the behaviour of this government and how it treats their democratically elected representatives with despair.
The Speaker agreed and MPs will have up to 3 hours to air their views. Then something you don't see very often at all. One Labour MP lifted the mace, the symbol of Parliament's authority, in protest at the government's decision. The EU has suggested it is ready to talk, but the Prime Minister needs more than words to win over some of her own MPs back home who want changes to the deal itself. Jonathan Blake, BBC News, Westminster.
Our political correspondent Chris Mason joins me now. Extraordinary.
It was extraordinary. I mean, ultimately it was a decision that came down to survival from the Prime Minister. If the vote had gone ahead today, the numbers were pretty clear. She was going to lose and in all likelihood lose big. Now, yes, there were some saying, oh, you can go along to Brussels with a card in your pocket saying, look, I told you this deal wasn't going to fly and here are the numbers to prove it. But politically, the danger for her would be in that situation that things would move so rapidly that, who knows, she might not have survived as Prime Minister. She's still Prime Minister. She can go off as she is on this trip around Europe to see what she can extract. But the crucial question now is what can she possibly get out of the European Union that adds up to enough to convince enough people over there to change their mind. Now, with every passing week, we get closer to the potential of a no-deal Brexit, and we know that plenty of people in there absolutely don't want to see that happen. But will that be enough for them to be willing in the end to wear a deal that we know plenty at the moment don't like the look of?
It's a question. I mean, we'll talk to Adam Fleming, our correspondent in Brussels now, to just see how receptive the EU leaders might be. Theresa May is going to travel to the European capitals today for talks with other leaders after her decision to postpone a Commons vote on her Brexit deal. She's going to go to The Hague, Berlin and Brussels, see what help they can provide in selling the agreement to MPs. Adam Fleming is there in Brussels for us. And, you know, Chris was talking about just the mountain she almost has to climb to change the tone of this vote, or to at least seem as if she may get some support, but I suppose she needs a lot of support from those EU leaders too.
Yeah, not many mountains, but quite a few flights Theresa May is going to be taking today, unless she's getting the train. Yeah, we'll get a clue to how the EU is feeling in about half an hour's time, because European affairs ministers from the other countries are coming to this building in Brussels shortly for one of their regular meetings, and we'll be on the red carpet asking them. And we got a really good clue last night from Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, who will be chairing a summit of EU leaders on Thursday and Friday here. And he tweeted, we can have a look at it, he said, "I've decided to call a European Council on Brexit on Thursday." UCO in his tweet is the code that they use here in Brussels for a European summit. He says, "We will not renegotiate the deal, including the backstop," which is the controversial insurance policy for the Irish border, "but we are ready to discuss how to facilitate UK ratification. As time is running out, we will also discuss our preparedness for a no-deal scenario." And that's been retweeted more than 6,000 times, which shows you how interested people are in what he's got to say. Now, decoding that means the deal is not up for discussion, but what is up for discussion is ways to help it get through the British Parliament. So what form will that take? We don't know. I imagine we could see maybe some letters going backwards and forwards, maybe additional documents that sit alongside the Brexit deal that clarify individual bits of it, particularly about the backstop. Who knows? That's what is going to be discussed pretty intensively behind the scenes here in Brussels over the next couple of days, and we will keep an eye out for it. But the bottom line is the broad deal, the substance, the details, particularly of the backstop, are not going to change. And just as a backup plan, they're going to plough on with their preparations for no deal in case this whole thing collapses at some point.
It's a quandary, isn't it? Adam, thank you so much. And of course, we'll be talking to lots of people here in Westminster throughout the morning. I'll be talking to the former Director of Communications for Theresa May in just a few minutes. Dan, back to you.
Thank you, Naga. We'll be back in Westminster, as Naga says, just after we've brought you some of the other news around on this Tuesday morning. And the father of the murdered backpacker, Grace Millane, has visited the place where her body was found. That's on the outskirts of Auckland. David Millane took part in a traditional Maori blessing ceremony alongside Grace's uncle and members of the New Zealand Police Force. A 26-year-old man has been charged with her murder. More now from our correspondent in Auckland, Hal Griffith.
This has been another heartbreaking day for the Millane family as Grace's father and uncle came here to visit the site where her body was found. Now, alongside the detective who's led the investigation into Grace's murder, they took part in a traditional Maori blessing service in the undergrowth in the place where she was found. Flowers now mark that location. Members of the public have also been bringing their flowers here to show their compassion towards the family. Although the forensic teams have finished their work at this site, we've seen other officers working through the dense woodland nearby, looking for any signs of disturbance, any evidence left behind as they build their case against the 26-year-old man they allege murdered Grace. And as part of that, they've issued a new public appeal for anyone who's found a shovel, a hardwood red-topped shovel, which they believe could have been discarded after Grace's disappearance. Now, that sense of shock over Grace's murder is still palpable here, and there are plans for candlelit vigils to be held in Auckland and in other cities across New Zealand as people come together to show their compassion for Grace's family.
6 people believed to be from Iran have been rescued from a small boat off the Kent coast. The Dover lifeboat launched at around 3 o'clock this morning, about 3:30 in fact. The 6 were brought to shore by a Border Force cutter. It's the second boat to arrive this month, though numbers have dropped from last month due to difficult conditions with the weather. Scientists are warning that newly discovered melting glaciers in East Antarctica could cause significant sea level rises around the globe. The region has long been considered stable and unaffected by some of the more dramatic changes occurring elsewhere on the continent. NASA say they've looked at images and they show that ice streams running into the ocean there along the eastern coastline have actually sped up. The American state of North Carolina experienced an entire year's worth of snowfall yesterday. Southeastern parts of the country have been battered with snow, sleet and freezing rain. At least 3 people died and more than 300,000 people lost power there. There's also been widespread disruption at both on the roads and, as you can see there, at the airports as well. It's been a year of TV highlights, and according to TV licensing, news and current affairs programme have been dominating the most tweeted about shows on the BBC in the year of 2018. Question Time, Andrew Marr Show and Doctor Who, unsurprisingly, were in the top 3 spots. But we found out this morning that breakfast is number 8 on the top 20 list, largely due to Mike Bushell falling in a swimming pool. But do keep them coming. We really do enjoy reading your social media posts. I know Twitter is always busy in the morning, and so too is Facebook. And what quite a few of our breakfast viewers do is continue a debate on there if there's something particularly pressing that we talk about on the programme. And our top story today, you won't be surprised to hear, is Brexit and the fallout from what happened yesterday at Westminster. And Nagit is there for us this morning. And Nagit, it's one of those mornings where I almost feel like you have to apologise, but this is really important stuff. And yesterday was one of those days we thought could be really dramatic, and it proved to be so, but not for the reasons we were expecting.
Just chaos, I think. Extraordinary. So many different types of words that are coming out that cannot describe what happened here yesterday. I mean, so many people were surprised. It was such a long way from the organised Brexit that Theresa May had promised to deliver. I'll tell you one person who can give us some insight into what is going on in the office of Theresa May at the moment. Katie Perrier was Ms May's Director of Communications at the start of her tenure in 10 Downing Street in 2016, played a key role in establishing, you'll remember it, the strong and stable image. Katie, good morning. How close are we to that strong and stable image now?
Well, not at all, really. What we had is chaos and confusion yesterday. And of course, that's kind of followed on from the last year of failing to sell to the nation and to her own parliamentary colleagues the idea of a compromise. So that kind of strong language versus what we saw yesterday is a real disconnect. And what we've got really is a situation in number 10 whereby they're rolling out ministers to tell everybody absolutely this vote was going to take place, and then only a few short hours later it wasn't. It just looked chaotic.
What happened behind the scenes? What was going on? Because we were talking about 15 minutes, a complete change, an about turn when it came to that vote. What was been going on behind the scenes?
Well, we always knew it would go to the wire in terms of that decision making, and they had briefed over the weekend that there was they would take the decision quite last minute just to see the strength of feeling. They were hoping they were going to win people over at the weekend, but the more interaction that MPs had with number 10, the worse it was making the situation in a way. And I think that what happened is the whips were coming for some criticism, but I think that's probably a little bit unfair, because the whips would have been telling number 10 for days and possibly weeks that she was never going to win this vote, and it was about the size of the defeat that she was facing.
Explain the role of the whips.
The whips go round making sure that as many people can cross the line as possible into the voting chamber that they want them to vote in support. And of course they've been feeding back to number 10 that every day that passes we've got more and more people saying they're not going to vote for this Brexit deal, leaving her in an impossible situation. But of course she kind of saw this situation coming. It's not like the election where she would come back from that election campaign and she was in a terrible situation where she looked like she'd been crying, she looked like she was very upset. I see a tired Theresa May, but I don't see her in that situation, because I think that she knew this was coming. She knew she had to get off the fence at some point, and she had to back a kind of a Brexit deal.
Tired, yes. Determined, still. And long days, that's to be expected. She's had 2 years of this, really, hasn't she? She goes to Brussels now. What do you know of the relationship she has with EU leaders at the moment in terms of how receptive they will be? Because they're keeping a very close eye on what's going on.
I think they want to help her, because in a situation that she's in, they face down the possibility of a Boris Johnson Prime Minister or a Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and they know they're not going to get a better deal from their end of the bargain. So they want to help her, but their red lines, which they argue was kind of set, some of those things were set by Theresa May at the beginning of the process, which made it very, very hard to manoeuvre now. Their red lines are their red lines, and they're not willing to budge. They're saying they would happily clarify and happily talk about the legal situation, but they are not going to open this deal again.
The fact that this vote has been delayed, how much do you agree with the accusation that this is politics over democracy?
Sad as it may be, I think that people have a point in that, because internal polling at number 10 shows the Prime Minister that the country believes that we need to get on with Brexit, and she's kind of held that in power play over this time, saying that it's everybody else that's delaying the will of the people that's stalling this. By putting the vote yesterday, she's actually losing the sympathy and the kind of the pity that she's had from the nation. Lots of people have thought she's determined, she's resilient, you know, she's trying to do the best deal possible. But when she pulls it to play politics to stay in power a little bit longer, that's when she starts to lose the sympathy of the general public, and I'm worried about that.
How much longer do you think she has as Prime Minister?
I never ever make predictions because I'm constantly wrong when it comes to predictions in politics. I just think that, you know, giving her that time and that space to go back and try, when she comes back, hopefully she will have something to come back with. But, you know, you never, in this scenario, it's chaotic. You never know whether it's a day, an hour, or, you know, weeks or months. I think that, you know, her Brexiteer colleagues will probably get rid of her when a deal gets over the line if we get there.
I'm assuming you don't miss the job.
I don't miss the job one bit.
Katie Ferrier, thank you very much for joining us. Theresa May's former Director of Communications. Carol, let's find out what's happening with the weather. Carol, it's chilly here. That's as good as my forecast gets.
Well, that's pretty good, Naga, and it's accurate as well. Good morning. It's chilly across many parts this morning. We've got a touch of frost across parts of central Scotland, for example, northeast England, where we've got clear skies, and there's some patchy mist and fog to boot. That will give way, though, to some brightness, some sunshine, but for most of us, it is going to be a chilly day ahead and a cloudy one. So we've got one weak front moving towards the east, and we've got another one which is trying to nudge against an area of high pressure and not making a lot of progress. So the brightest skies this morning, where we've got the frost, northern Scotland, down towards the Midlands, East Anglia, parts of the southeast. That's where we've got the sunshine. We'll also see some sunshine north and east Wales too. But for the rest of us, expect some cloud, expect some little bits and pieces of drizzle as well, as our weather front remains out towards the west, giving some rain eventually in across the Isles of Scilly, for example. In the west, temperatures a little bit higher, 10 or 11. We're looking at 6, 7s and 8s, maybe a 9 in London, and that's not particularly brilliant for the time of year. Now, heading on through the evening and overnight, we still will have a fair bit of cloud around. When it breaks, especially in eastern areas, the temperature will be low enough for a touch of frost in rural parts. Out towards the west, our weather front still with us, still producing some rain. At times, we could see the odd heavier burst, but as it continues to bump into this area of high pressure, it will be losing some of its energy. And by the time we get to tomorrow, it will be a fairly weak affair. You can see it through the Outer Hebrides, Northern Ireland, West Wales and down towards southwest England. Now we start off on a bright note in the east tomorrow, and the high pressure from Scandinavia starts to build, so we'll see a bit more brightness across much of England and also East Wales. Northeast Scotland, again, favoured for some sunshine as well. Temperatures higher in the west than in the east. Frosty start on Thursday, but again we'll see some sunshine around. There will be some cloud around as well, and some rain across the Channel Islands and southwest England. Now, the other significant thing about Thursday is the wind. There'll be a noticeable wind wherever you are, the strongest in the west. These are the kind of temperatures you can expect to see mid-afternoon on your thermometer. But add on the effects of the wind, it will feel more like freezing just above or indeed just below, so it will be a day for wrapping up warmly. And then by the time we get to Friday, well, again a lot of sunshine around, variable amounts of cloud. Up this east coast though, northeast England and eastern Scotland, we could well see some wintry showers, and on the hills above about 250 metres in Scotland, we could well see some snow. And these are the kind of temperature values you can expect. Dan.
Thank you, Carol. Big coat is out and in full force. I might even dig the gloves out as well later.
Excellent.
Excellent. See, I've been taking very much advice from Carol this morning. It's approaching 7:20. Let's show you some of the front pages today, because they're dominated by some of the events that we saw in Westminster yesterday, where there was due to be a vote today, but the Prime Minister postponed it. The Guardian say desperate May reveals her plan B to buy more time. And most of the pictures on the front page of the papers are taken from the House of Commons yesterday. Daily Mirror have gone for May running scared, and Harry Redknapp laughing his head off, which he did quite a bit in the jungles, on the front page of the Mirror as well. I'll show you one more as well. The Daily Mail have got May's last roll of the dice, talking about the humiliating defeat they say she was facing after the Brexit vote, which could have toppled her. She's forced into a dramatic climb down. Those are the front pages, and Naga's looking, I suppose, at the political side of this. Steph's with us this morning as well, because for quite a long time, Steph, we've been talking about uncertainty in the business world, all brought about by discussions about what might happen, what could happen, when will it happen, and that just, it really does affect the markets, doesn't it, and small businesses as well.
Yes, you see
instant impact when something like the vote delay was announced yesterday. You see the currency markets fall. Lots of big trade organisations that represent businesses also put out statements. All of them were pretty scathing, to be honest, talking about how much this uncertainty is going to impact business. But also, you know, it's important to listen to all the smaller businesses as well to see what they're saying on things. And that's what we've been doing, is just collecting some thoughts. And just to give you a few of them, we've got David, who's the managing director of an electronics firm in Blackburn called Northern Industrial, and he says his issue is not being able to plan. He feels like he's treading water. His business has grown 500% in the last 5 years. So it's a company doing brilliantly well.
Really well, yeah.
Really well, but he just says he wants to grow, he wants to get new premises, but he has no idea where to open the premises because he just wants to find out what's going to happen with the political situation. Again, we've got Neve, who runs a clothing company called Travel Wrap based in New Forest in Hampshire. She said she's seen her business grow to the US because of this. She says because of the currencies, and then she said the business to America's really grown. It's fallen in the UK, so overall she's got balance in her business. So it's not there's no unanimous view from business on all of this. And that's the key. You know, it's really hard to navigate between it all. Shauna, who runs a food company in Tyrone, Heavenly Tasty Organic, she says she imports goods from Europe. So it was a real shock to her yesterday when the vote was postponed, because she thought this is the first chance she's going to be able to decide what's going to happen next. And then you've got the huge companies like Mace, a big construction company, and they say for them, you know, their margins are really tight anyway. So when the currency's changing, that can create big risks for them. And their big issue is staff. Because they employ lots of people from the EU and the pound's fallen, their wages aren't worth as much as they were, and so they're losing staff as well. So there's so many different issues to this. It's complex, isn't it?
I know you spend half of your breakfast life in towns and cities all over the UK, sort of gauging the reaction to quite a bit of what happens in Westminster. Charlie's doing that today for us. Charlie is in Derby, because Naga's in Westminster, and Charlie's trying to get a feel of how the people of Derby are reacting, because I think, Charlie, was it 57% of people in Derby voted to leave in the referendum? It'd be interesting to know how things have changed, people you're speaking to there this morning.
Yes, this was a very strong Leave area. We're in Derby Market Hall this morning. It's interesting hearing what Steph was saying about how people are reacting. I mean, there is a lot of dismay right now about the indecision, if you like, and I think that's reflected here in the marketplace as well. I mean, Father Christmas there behind me is smiling. I'm not sure who else is. Let's talk to a few people who've gathered here this morning. Let's go over to the chocolate shop here. It's Daniel, who's a student. Morning, guys. Daniel and Claire, come over this way if you would, guys. So, Daniel, first of all, you were a Remain voter, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what do you make of what you're seeing at the moment?
To be honest, it's just a mess, really, in my point of view. It's a bit scary stepping into the unknown. It's been 2 years. We still don't know what's going on, really. So, just going forward.
Are you one of those who'd like another referendum? I mean, right now, that doesn't look like one of the most likely outcomes, but is that where you are?
Not particularly. Like, the people have had their vote, that's democracy, and we unfortunately voted to leave, and that's the decision we have to stick with. Moving forward, we just have to pick the right outcome for everyone, really.
And Claire, you're a local landlady,
Yes.
so you're in business effectively, and you were a Leaver, and you remain so. Your opinions haven't changed, because a lot of people have been talking about whether what they're seeing has made them question things. What do you make of what's happening now?
Yeah, my opinion hasn't changed. I just think we should turn round, walk away and leave.
And this is, the prospect clearly is potentially a no-deal situation. Does that concern you?
No, it doesn't at all, because I think we just need to leave and be free, because if we're free we can make our own laws, and we don't want one foot in one camp and one foot in the other camp, because that will actually prevent us from making any laws that are right for our country.
OK, let's head over the other way here. You may have seen earlier on, we brought the sofa with us this morning. Interesting what Claire was saying about just wanted to go anyway. No fear about no deal. Locally, of course, here in Derby, many people work at the Toyota factory and have been concerns if there is a no deal about supply chains, and they said that would affect things. I'm going to take a seat here. Morning, everyone. Morning. Howard, this is Howard, Ian and Karen Smart. Karen is the Managing Director of East Midlands Airport. Morning to you, Karen. First of all, can I just ask you, We were talking about how the prospect of a no-deal scenario really does concern people. I mean, how prepared is the airport for that scenario?
The airport's been planning for quite some time now and prepared for every eventuality. We're looking for some certainty and looking for a deal of some sort, because a no deal does bring that short-term uncertainty. And really, we want to get the consumer confidence. We've had some real positive news in the aviation industry in that the UK and the EU have agreed a framework which will allow continued travel regardless of the outcome in March. So people should be confident to get out there and book the flight.
So Ian, you're in the house building business. How are things for you, and what do you make of a lot of confusion at the moment?
Yeah, it's causing instability. It's causing confusion. We just want some confidence back. My general feeling is that things are just slowing up slightly, and what we want is a deal. In fact, we're at a point where we just want any deal, so we can just return to, just get some confidence back into what we're doing.
And Howard, you come from a different area. You're in finance.
Yep.
Can I ask you similarly, what do you make of what's happening?
Well, it's a shambles, isn't it? I think the sad part is that local business people are far more practical and pragmatic than the politicians are, and that we really could do with just putting this plan into action. I mean, I was a Remainer, but when we lost the vote, I mean, no decision is perfect, but it's perfect to make a decision, and what they aren't doing at the moment is making a decision.
This delay that is happening now, necessarily, we've got 21 days at least before anything happens. What do you make of that?
Well, it's certainly affecting our clients all the time over over their investment in business. They're going and putting their money into property, not into businesses, and it's the businesses that we want to thrive.
Thank you all very much for your time this morning. Good to see you here. That's it for us this morning. We're back in around an hour's time talking to more of those who turn up. It's getting a little busier, as you can probably hear at the market. I'll leave you with a shot of Santa, who is still laughing.
Very good morning, I'm Asad Ahmed. White working class boys have been found to be among the most disadvantaged in London, and there are calls for them to get more support from teachers, mental health services and youth workers. A report commissioned by the Greater London Authority says white and black Caribbean boys are both in need of support to raise their education levels and their future job prospects. The report found white pupils eligible for free school meals to be the lowest attaining of the main ethnic groups. The family of a former soldier from Crawley who took his own life have won a six-figure payout from NHS bosses who admitted a catalogue of failings in his care. Aidan Knight, who served in Iraq with Elite 2 Para, had been struggling mentally and was desperately looking for professional help when he died. The 29-year-old had told his mother he'd seen too much death. A coroner found the NHS Trust should have done more for Mr Knight. It's apologised to the family. London's most famous bongs are being replaced by those from Rochdale in Greater Manchester. Of course, I'm talking about Big Ben's bongs. When they sound on BBC Radio 4 6 o'clock news, they'll be replaced by the bells from Rochdale Town Hall on Christmas Eve. Well, Radio 4 has been broadcasting recordings since August last year when the bells of Big Ben fell silent for repair work. Rochdale Borough Council, they're thrilled. They say they're proud the town's bongs will ring out over the land. Of course they are. Let's take a look at the travel situation now, and if we look at the tube board, we see it's a good service on all lines this morning. On the trains, the South Western Railway have delays because of a fault with the track at Woking. Moving on to the roads, then, it's the usual delays northbound at the Blackwall Tunnel. As you can see, that's going to stay there for a while yet. While in East London in Leighton, there are temporary traffic lights on Lee Bridge Road, and that's near Church Road, causing delays in the area. Look at the weather forecast now with Elizabeth.
Hello, good morning. It's another chilly feeling day again today, and with clear skies last night, many of us are starting off this morning with a touch of frost. Also some patches of mist and fog out there too. But it'll stay dry today. There'll be plenty of sunshine around at times, and we're starting off on a largely sunny note. In fact, the patches of mist and fog, which are mostly out towards western home counties, will gradually lift and clear as we head through the course of the morning. A bit more cloud milling around as we head through the afternoon, but still some decently long spells of sunshine. Top temperatures today between 7 and 9 degrees Celsius, just a light southeasterly breeze. Now through this evening and overnight it should stay mostly dry. There'll be plenty of cloud out towards the west, some clear spells hanging on towards eastern areas. Here we could see a touch of frost into tomorrow morning, but the breeze is going to pick up, so we'll stay largely frost free tomorrow. Overnight lows of around 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow some good spells of brightness and sunshine, staying dry for the rest of the working week, feeling chilly and mighty cold on Thursday with a lot of added wind chill.
A newspaper review and Brexit is what Vanessa Phelps is discussing on her breakfast show in the next half hour on BBC Radio London.
Good morning, it's just gone 7:31. You're watching Breakfast with Naga Munchetty, who's down in Westminster for us today, and I'm here in the studio in Salford. Let's bring you a summary of this morning's main stories from BBC News. And Theresa May has begun a whistle-stop tour of the EU in a bid to rescue her Brexit deal. It follows another dramatic day in Westminster as the Prime Minister announced she was delaying the vote on that plan. Senior Conservatives have warned Mrs May she needs to secure changes to the withdrawal agreement to have any chance of winning over sceptical MPs. We shall try and seek reassurances from EU leaders about the Northern Ireland backstop. The single biggest issue is she's threatening her Brexit deal, and she's due to hold a breakfast meeting this morning with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. Let's speak to our correspondent Anna Honnigan, who's in The Hague for us this morning. Good morning to you, Anna. So I know she probably has big hopes for these series of meetings she has over the next few hours or so. What realistically can she get out of the Dutch Prime Minister?
Oh, that's a very good question. Theresa May is scheduled to arrive here at the Cat's House, the Dutch Prime Minister's official residence, in about half an hour's time. The press has arrived, the catering trucks have gone in. Still the question, will it be a continental or full English? But the serious question is, can Theresa May get these reassurances that she's looking for here in The Hague, in Berlin later, and later on this evening, possibly even in Brussels? She will be looking specifically for a possible change to the text inside the withdrawal agreement, specifically relating to this idea of the best endeavours that the EU has promised to give in an effort to reach a trade deal to avoid any kind of need to invoke the backstop in Northern Ireland. But can Mr Rutte give her those assurances? He has already said this is the only deal on the table, so she will be hoping that this breakfast provides more than that.
And Anna, what is the feeling like? I know you're based there in The Hague. What is the feeling like of the perspective of Britain based on what we saw happen in Parliament yesterday? Because we're all talking about it here. How is the rest of Europe looking at that?
You know, here in the Netherlands, they considered themselves to be one of the UK's closest allies, especially in terms of trade, but also politics. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, self-confessed Anglophile, he has always said there is nothing good about Brexit. We want to keep Britain inside the EU. There was at first a sense of loss, then bewilderment, and now bafflement. You know, people here can't really understand, given how close their relationship is with the EU, what Britain is doing. Mark Rutte, though, king of consensus, he may be able to help Theresa May a little in that sense, but he will be towing the EU line, I think.
OK, well, Anna, we'll try and pick up with you a little bit later on, or we'll hear from Anna and we'll get analysis of that meeting and the rest of what Theresa May is up to today throughout the day across the BBC News channel for you. Elsewhere, away from Brexit, the father of murdered backpacker Grace Millane has visited the place where her body was found on the outskirts of Auckland. David Millane took part in a traditional Maori blessing ceremony alongside Grace's uncle, and you can see members of the New Zealand police force there as well. A 26-year-old man has been charged with her murder. 6 people believed to be from Iran have been rescued from a small boat off the Kent coast. The lifeboat left over at around 3:30 this morning, and the Border Force brought 6 people in total to shore. It's the second boat to arrive this month. Numbers have actually dropped off from last month, and that is due to bad weather. A convicted paedophile will be sentenced later for murdering 2 schoolgirls near Brighton in 1986. 52-year-old Russell Bishop was originally acquitted of killing Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway, but then found guilty after a second trial. Well, yesterday the girls' mothers wept at the Old Bailey as verdicts were read out following an 8-week hearing. Guidance to help transgender people mark their transition and rededicate their lives to Christianity will be announced later by the Church of England. The advice was approved by the House of Bishops, and it makes clear that transgender people should be addressed by their chosen name. The Church of England announced last year it would consider a special service, though this guidance does not contain any new liturgy. Scientists are warning that newly discovered melting glaciers in East Antarctica could cause significant sea level rises right around the globe. The region has long been considered stable and unaffected by some of the more dramatic changes occurring elsewhere on the continent. But images that NASA has studied show that ice streams running into the ocean along the eastern coastline have actually sped up. I've got a bit more detail on that a little later in the programme for you. In around about 10 minutes' time, snow is on the agenda for Carol as well in some parts of the UK. We'll get the weather with Carol. And Sally can hopefully do some predicting for tonight for us in the sport.
It's a really big day in Europe, isn't it? For lots of reasons.
Yes.
If you're into Europe.
Give us a Brexit break though, Sally.
Shall I? I promise you, there's no Brexit coming up in